This is Judith Lay welcoming you to Manx Radio and to the podcast of this week's edition of At Your Service. Manx Radio! Flowers, bells and prayers, they're all featured on the programme today. But first, let's start in song, a great Wesley hymn, Christ whose glory fills the skies. The St Michael Singers and Christ whose glory fills the skies. Do you remember when the churches of the island were one in the park? It was 11 years ago when, thanks to the generosity of the organisers of a music festival in Nobles Park, the churches of all denominations on the island were offered the use of a huge marquee for a united service one sunny Sunday morning. And literally thousands gathered there for a great shared celebration that included drama, music, dance and prayer. John Powell, who's pastor of Elim Community Church in Onken, was one of the leading organisers and remembers what a great day it was.
Yes, it was. It was great. It was in a music tent, but we got the keys to it on a Sunday morning and 2,500-3,000 Christians got together in one place. And it was a great time. And we followed that through a couple of years later with Simply Prayer to say, Lord, this is our island and your island. What would you like to do with it?
Now, that Simply Pray 9 years ago was on Tynwald Hill. Like One in the Park, it was ecumenical. All the churches were invited to participate. It was open to people of all faiths and none. Tell me what you're doing this time, John.
It's very similar-ish. I'm chairman of Churches Alive in Man, which is most of the denominations are members of it. And it's been really good to have fellowship amongst the denominations. But it came to light that there was a chance that we could be part of the Tynwald National Week here on the Isle of Man. And so the thought process was, one of the important things that goes into building a nation is churches and its faith and its prayer. So we approached the government and asked them whether there was any chance during Tynwald Week whether we could borrow the hill for prayer. And they very kindly came back just this last week and said yes. So on Tuesday evening, the 6th, the day after Tynwald, from 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock, we're allowed to gather around the hill for prayer. Many of the ministers have got back and said, yep, they're going to be part of it. And so we're just saying at short notice, let's start praying together during National Week. And so it'll be maybe small acorns and hopefully produce an oak tree in a few years. But we would love to see the vision as part of National Week is national prayer for our island. And I think most people can see there's lots and lots of issues facing the island. There's elections coming up, Brexit's happened, and the island is part of a new wide world. And then there's social and economic change, and there's a lot going on in our little island. And so it would be good to gather to pray and ask God's blessing on our island. So that's the vision. This is the first one we're going to have a go at, and so hopefully it will grow from there. But we really want to put prayer at the centre of National Week. So it's prayer for our nation. That's what we've called it.
If somebody wasn't a church-going person and perhaps wouldn't consider themselves to be a person of prayer, but thinks that it's a good idea, would they feel comfortable there? Would they feel as though they can blend in?
Well, what we've done is we've designed it in such a way that there'll be 5 little slots of 10 minutes. So one of the ministers will stand on the hill and just explain what the next section is. So it might be for the politicians in the upcoming election. We're going to pray for our government. So what happens is they'll open in prayer that section, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, and the next 6 or 7 minutes, people just pray in their hearts. Or maybe if they came with someone, they could pray quietly together. So if you just wanted to reflect on these things, you don't have to pray out loud. We're just encouraging people to pray in their heart or just pray with their neighbour and to contemplate the things that we are putting at God's feet. The education and young people, we're looking at peace and prosperity, certain topics along those lines, and obviously pray for the church as a whole, that they might be one and work together well in the future. So you could come, watch, listen, never say a word to anybody and go home. On the other hand, you might well bump into someone you've not seen for years. All different denominations, all backgrounds. It's very simple, straightforward prayers. It's basically an open field. And what Tynwald was about, the gathering of the people. So the day before, the laws are read, and we're hoping that the following day we'll gather before God at Tynwald, a meeting of God's people and people who love the island, and we can just gather together. So we want to see it as maybe a synergy between the island and our faith.
So it's Tuesday, 6th of July, and it's at Tynwald Hill from 7 until 8. Will it go ahead no matter what the weather?
Yes, unless we get a weather warning, we'll be on.
Let it roll like a river from the mountains to the sea. Let righteousness and justice flow through me. Let it roll like a river coming down from heaven above. Pour out the living water of your love to bring hope among the hopeless, the poor and dispossessed, healing for the broken, the outcast and oppressed. God of justice, God of truth, God of grace so deep and free, God of mercy, God of hope, let your love be real in me. Let it roll.
Thank you to Pastor John Powell, who's inviting us to join him on Tynwald Hill at St John's for an hour of prayer for our island on the evening of July the 6th from 7 until 8. That's the sound of the bells of St Thomas's Church here in Douglas, ringing yesterday morning and making our island part of a little bit of bell-ringing history. Yesterday marked the 200th anniversary of the invention of something known as the Elim apparatus, a device that enables one person to ring all the church bells in a tower. Each bell is struck while it's static, instead of the bells being rotated. One of these devices is installed in the tower of St Thomas's Church in Finch Road here in Douglas, and yesterday at noon, St Thomas's Tower Captain Edwin Creer joined over 200 other towers worldwide in a ring to mark the 200th anniversary of the invention. After he'd completed his historic ring, I went up into the tower at St Thomas's Church to have a chat with Edwin Creer.
We are celebrating the 200th anniversary of the Elim chime system. It's whereby one person can actually control all the 8 bells. What it boiled down to, the Reverend Elim was listening to people pulling the bells in the belfry, and there was a lot of raucous behaviour going on. One or two people a little frivolous, etc., maybe drunk. And he thought there must be a better system than this. So he thought about this, and he thought, I can design something whereby one person can actually control all the bells rather than pulling them. So this system is situated in churches throughout the world. And we are celebrating, I say, the 200th anniversary today, and they will be rung Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, 74 churches, I think it is, in Britain. And it's a wonderful system.
Indeed it is, and it gets around the present day difficulty of getting enough people to have a full ring of bells, because it's not always easy these days, is it?
No, there's only two other churches that I can think of. That's the Cathedral Church, where they have a team of bell ringers, and St George's Church. And they have been here this morning, actually, looking at the apparatus and so forth, and playing tunes on them. And it's been a very good morning, to be honest, there.
With this movement, this Elim movement, you're able to ring out hymn tunes. I've been listening to a selection of hymn tunes now.
They are fantastic, to be honest, there. And there's a number of hymn tunes you can play. But of course, getting into St Thomas's clock tower is not very easy, as you know, if you've climbed up here. So it's harder to get people to do it. I think St George's and obviously Peel are easier. But we battle on. They're not rung every Sunday, but they're rung, quite a few times.
It is really very special to be here, to be part of this moment of history. And Edwin, thank you for putting the Isle of Man on the world ringing map and celebrating this remarkable anniversary. I hope you can still come up here and keep ringing for many more years.
Thank you very much. That's really kind.
And from bells we go to blooms. The Isle of Man Flower Festival is normally a week-long event involving perhaps some 20 different churches. But this year it'll take place over just 3 days and in one venue. Those 3 days are next weekend, and organiser Judy Matthews will join me in a moment to tell us more. But as this festival has its origins back in 1991, I thought it would be a good moment to have a chat with a couple of people who were there right at the start. Eileen Speers, a skilled flower arranger with office administration experience too, found herself as both secretary and treasurer when the Manx Heritage Flower Festival started. 1991 was the first flower festival, and it was for the decade of evangelism. It was a project that was going to bring churches of different denominations together, which was a great idea, Eileen, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And it was fellowship between churches.
It was also a great way of getting people into churches that they might not have visited before, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. I thought it was a great idea. I got involved through Barbara Cushnigan, really. And then we had Mary Carter as well. Mary Carter was the Roman Catholic. We then got a Methodist lady, and Pat Jackson and me.
Well, it was a strong team to start with. And of course, by the time we got to the year 2000, it was firmly established. It was part of the Manx calendar. I want to go to the year 2000 now and talk about the festival in that year. I'm looking now at the programme for the year 2000, and it is as relevant today. The Manx Heritage Flower Festival's floral celebration of the millennium, a Christian milestone, a celebration of faith. And the venue wasn't a church, was it, Eileen?
No, because 47 churches on the island wanted to take part that year. So we chose various venues and picked churches that would work together, different denominations of the churches. I was involved at St John's. In St John's store in the atrium, we set up our show in the atrium, and there was St Runius was the Marown Parish Church. There was Bagarrow Methodist Chapel. There was All Saints at Lonnon, St Luke's Church Baldwin, the Howe Methodist Chapel, the Sacred Heart Roman Catholic Church Pulrose, and Union Mills Methodist Chapel. So there were representatives from all those churches, all working on the same venue.
Tell me how that worked, Eileen.
Well, I went down to Tynwald Mills and had a talk to Mr. Jevons and decided that the best place to have something static would be in the atrium, and he allowed us to use the atrium. So each church had a part of the story, because it was the story of Jesus' birth and death and ascension into heaven. And it worked. This was a baby that had affected the world more than any other baby. What we did, we got some pallets and laid them on the ground. And then in the width of it, we had the birth, and then the shepherds, and then the kings. And then we had some stands made about eye-line height. And on there, we had the parables. We had 5 parables going around this big area. The next level was the crucifixion, and we had the poppies to denote the modern day remembrance. And then above that, there was the ascension of Jesus going back up into heaven, and it was just rather glorious. I think most of the people involved would remember it, because it really was a very good working atmosphere, and, well, we were doing the right thing, if you like. It was very nice that they had several churches working together, because that's the aim of what we were trying to do in the first place, was trying to get fellowship amongst all the different organisations, you know, in religion.
And it did get people discovering churches.
Yes, that was the reason. You're very tentative going somewhere strange, but to go in where there's flowers to look at was nothing. You could just go in. It worked. It was very good.
It was an ecumenical bridge that thousands of people crossed, didn't they?
Yes, they did. They did.
Again, looking at the programme that you produced for the Christian Milestone, the celebration of faith at Tynwald Mills, and you say at the very end, please enjoy what you see, then go home and think about it all. And that's really the message.
That's what they did. That's what they would do, because you could see the description of Jesus' life, you know. So it was the best we could do.
When I think about later years, I think about the way lots of organisations would get involved. And I remember distinctly going into Kirkmichael Methodist Church, and the fire station had done a display.
Oh, right.
And those kind of things really brought the festival into the community, didn't they?
Yes. Cubs and Scouts and the young people getting involved and doing their own thing. That's very good, because they can see what we're trying to do.
And the thing you were always at pains to say when young people were involved, you don't have to use expensive flowers.
No.
Or elaborate vases. Painted jam jars I've seen done to great effect.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I say that to flower arrangers anyway. The girls in the church, when they were doing the flowers, it wouldn't worry me if it was jam jars on the altar. I don't think it would worry Jesus either.
It's all about doing it with love, isn't it?
It is. To me, flowers are living things. I talk to my flowers, and I think foliage is magnificent. Foliage makes an arrangement.
We're sitting looking at your beautiful garden. Does that feed your soul, having a little pot around your garden?
Yes, but definitely. You give what you can and they will repay you.
And isn't that a lesson for life?
Oh, yes.
Eileen Speers, thank you very much indeed for all that you've contributed to the Flower Festival over the years, and thank you for talking to me this morning.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much.
Eileen mentioned another founder member of the original Manx Heritage Flower Festival, Mrs. Pat Jackson of Agnish.
The girls up here in Agnish have been talking about the Flower Festival and should we all go in for it. But they hadn't any flower arranging experience. So, yes, I was asked if I would give a hand. So I obviously said yes. And that's the history of it, really. You get embroiled in these things. But what's made me enjoy it more than anything was the involvement, not just of putting on a nice display of flowers, which is lovely in any situation, but the fact that it brought families in on it, because aunties, uncles, grandmas, cousins, anybody that sort of could do anything a bit crafty was involved. All sorts of bits and pieces to tell the history of the churches, which sort of gets lost somehow. people go to church, that's fine, but it is as it is now. And the history of the churches and chapels really sort of got lost in a way. But the Flower Festival brought it all back again. And as I say, people got involved, even if you weren't into flowers. But husbands got involved at making bits and pieces, stands for things. Somebody else would perhaps do a few pots for outside. Children collect flowers, wildflowers. I remember at Union Mills once, the children had collected a lot of flowers and they were in jam pots. Do you know, they were just as lovely as some of the what I call shop-bought flowers. Yes, it was lovely to see the involvement. And nowadays, I think some of that involvement has waned a bit. And I think it's a shame.
Well, you make a lot of really important points there, Pat. And what you were always very keen to do was to impress upon people that you didn't have to spend a fortune. And you would always say, you know, if you need some props, ask around. Has anybody got a fireman's helmet or a particular kind of urn or pot? And it brought people together.
That's right.
And it got people exploring the history. You encouraged people to tease out the history, to give out little leaflets.
That's right.
But did you imagine that it would go on for so long?
Actually, I did think it might continue. Flower arranging is a wide-ranging thing. Up at Lonnon Old Church one year, they wanted like a little shed. It would be a byre for keeping sheep in or cattle, and they did like a little lean-to, just as you go in the church grounds there. And the husbands and sons and uncles and grandpas that got involved, they enjoyed it too.
Agnish is your chapel. You live almost in the shadow of Agnish Chapel. But you've mentioned Union Mills, you've mentioned Lonnon Old Church. This was what people like you with the skills, and you are a skilled flower arranger, you would go and help,
yes.
wasn't it?
And if our church wasn't involved, because we enjoyed doing it, we'd go and help somewhere else, even if it was just stewarding. You know, fetch me, bring me, carry me. You need those sort of people. The tea ladies. I think every church put on refreshments of some sort, even if it was tea and a biscuit. But not only did it bring an income to the churches and chapels, but it got people mixing with each other.
But Flower Festival involvement isn't over for Pat. Pat and her daughter Cindy Quirk, another long-term supporter of the Flower Festival, will be creating a display on behalf of Agnish Chapel, and it'll be one of almost 30 that can be enjoyed next weekend in St John's Mill. To get all the details of this year's festival, I caught up with organiser Judy Matthews for a quick chat in a coffee shop between last-minute preparations and meetings. We've heard Eileen talking there about in the year 2000, the Flower Festival went out into the shopping area at St John's, and here we are 21 years later, and the Flower Festival this year is going back, not quite into the shopping area, but into St John's Mill building. How do you feel about that, Judy?
I think it's a wonderful opportunity. The committee were really emphatic that we needed to do something this year, having had to cancel last year's festival. And this seemed an opportunity to do something a little bit different, but to ensure that we kept the name of the Flower Festival and the activities of the Flower Festival on the cultural calendar of the island. And St John's Mill, it's sort of in the middle of everywhere. All roads lead to St John's, so it seemed a natural choice. And it's a beautiful environment and beautiful plain white walls to show off the displays to their credit. All we're asking each church to do is to come to St John's and provide one display. So we've got 25 of which are churches, one display by Manx National Heritage and one by Floriat, which are the best flower arrangers on the island, really, and we're very privileged to have them. And they're going to be decorating round the wheel that you mentioned, which will be working. It has enabled quite a few of the little churches, like Sandygate Methodist, to take part, who normally wouldn't be able to because of lack of resources, basically.
Yes, because it's not just the flowers, it's the stewarding, it's refreshments, it's all the festival experience. Eileen was mentioning there that back in the year 2000, Bob Jevons was delighted to have the Flower Festival in the mill. And he's still welcoming you back, isn't he?
Yes, he's still there. And he and the staff and the team there have been so supportive. I think it's something different for them, and I hope they're looking forward to it as much as we are. They have been most supportive all the way along, and we're very grateful to them.
You also mentioned that Floreat, the Floral Art Group, are involved, and that's a nice little sort of link with the past, because the Floral Art Groups gave so much help to churches where perhaps they didn't have a flower arranger. I can think of a number of occasions where churches were so keen to take part, but they didn't actually know how to go about doing the arrangements, conditioning the flowers, all of that kind of thing. So it's nice to have a little link there, isn't it?
It is, yes. I think it was the year before last. Some of the Floreat members helped us to do a workshop up at Derby at the community centre. It was very useful for people, as you say, who didn't know how to condition or how to soak oasis and things like that. If we get a new festival going next year, back on the old format, I'm sure we'll be knocking on their door for help and advice as usual. We felt this was, if you like, the easiest option for us, having had to pull the plug on last year's festival and incurring some costs. We wanted to do something that was minimal cost to the people taking part. By asking them just to do one decoration, it will, as I say, hopefully keep our place in the calendar, and next year who knows what will happen.
Judy, the thing about this festival is that it has always been about the churches reaching out to the community, whether welcoming people into their own building or, like this, going out into public places. And isn't it amazing that it's been going since 1990, something that was only intended at best to last for 10 years? It's still going strong.
It keeps going on, doesn't it? Yes. I think the old flower festival, the Manx Heritage Flower Festival, lasted for 20 years. And then we had a gap, and then people started jumping up and down and saying, we want a flower festival. So we've resurrected ourselves in a slightly different format. We're not under the umbrella of the churches now, but it is still primarily a church festival. And it's an opportunity for people normally to go in and look at other churches that they've perhaps never been in, even if they live around the corner. So hopefully that will happen next year.
So how do we enjoy this shorter festival that's got so much to offer?
Right, well, it's on for 3 days as opposed to the usual week. So it's Saturday, Sunday, Monday over Tynwald weekend. So Monday is Tynwald Day. It's at St John's Mill, which is through Tynwald Mills, but the only vehicle access through Tynwald Mill is for disabled. Everybody else is asked to park on the car park off the Portown Road. That will be signed. So it starts at 11 o'clock each day and runs through till 4:30. There is an event going on in Tynwald Mill at the same time. There's an artisan market on the Saturday and a craft market for the 3 days. So you can come and do it all and go to Tynwald Day on the Monday as well. And then come and see us. There'll be coffee and cakes in the cafe in St John's Mill, and there's a lift for those that can't get up the stairs, and we'd love to see you.
And the other thing that's worth mentioning, you are saying that all the parking is in the big car park on the Portown Road. And as you walk just the short distance towards the mill, there is, of course, the beautiful wildlife garden.
There is indeed, yes, and I've looked at the weather forecast. It looks as if it'll be nice to walk through the garden. From the car park, you come over the bridge and then immediately into the garden on your right. If it's a bit muddy, keep going on the road. And we're actually using the entrance on the road into St John's Mill because there'll be a one-way system going through the mill.
But it'll all be signposted.
It'll all be signposted.
The disabled parking bays are right outside the building, so drive to the mill if you need to use one of the disabled parking bays. Otherwise, it's the Portown Road car park and just walk. It's quite a short distance down. Any financial costs involved?
There's no costs involved unless you want a cup of coffee and a cake, but there will be some receptacles for donations, and whatever donations will be divided between all the different churches and organisations taking part.
Judy Matthews, thank you very much indeed for talking, and we look forward to seeing you at St John's Mill.
Thank you.
You can find more details on the website flowerfest.im or search Facebook for Isle of Man Flower Festival. There's also a green pilgrimage in the west of the island that starts next weekend too. There'll be more about that on next week's programme. News for the notice board and requests for your favourite hymns to be included in future programmes can all be sent to me via email, judithlay@manxradio.com. I'll be back tonight at 9 with Sundown, easy listening music to round off your weekend. But for now, this is Judith saying thank you for listening, and I wish you and those you love a blessed and peaceful week and a very good morning.
nation, Manx